Eugene had not thrown Levantian in a fit of resignation. He had carefully orchestrated the event. He had ensured Noir would be constantly looking out for Levantian by attacking with the sword. His strategy had been effective. Noir had no choice but to be conscious of Levantian. As strong as Noir was, the strikes from Levantian were effective against her. Noir was strong, but she wasn't arrogant. 300 years ago she had never shown herself directly, and after the war she selected demons who could rival her and corrupted them. She continued to gather strength regularly ever since by collecting life force. Contrary to her appearance and behavior, she was exceedingly cautious. It was inconceivable that Noir, knowing the threat Levantian posed, could ignore it. Instinctively, she kept her gaze primarily on Levantian with every attack Eugene launched. She made sure to keep a vigilant watch on Levantian, even if she allowed other attacks from him. As a result, Eugene's fist had made contact with Noir's face. He felt the crunch of her nasal bones breaking. Stronger, he wished, and with a crack his fist burst Noir's head. Noir's headless body staggered. Eugene didn't stop and swung his hand again. Levantian, which had been flung far, was now back in his hand. Summoning a fallen weapon was a simple spell. In fact, he didn't even need to cast magic for Levantian. Levantian itself was Eugene's divine sword. It would reappear in his hand whenever he wished. The blade, wrapped in divine fire, surged toward Noir. Eugene did harbor grand ambition. After all, although he had crushed Noir's head, she wasn't dead. It was just as he expected. Before Levantian could reach her, Noir's body reacted. With a thud, she kicked and sent Eugene reeling backward, striking a woman's face. Though headless, Noir's outcry was clear. Rumble. Dozens of buildings drawn from the city flew at Eugene. He ignored them. Eugene did not strike at the buildings but leaped again. Bang bang bang. The buildings targeting him shattered in the sky. Sienna had intercepted them from the ground. Anise, Christina, Eugene called in his mind. He had never tried it before, but he believed it was possible. He coated the blade of Levantian with light. Unfortunately, Eugene was not familiar with divine magic and miracles, but it was different for the saints. Though startled by Eugene's absurd request, they did not hesitate. If their god deemed it possible to perform a miracle, then surely it wasn't impossible. Like glass blowing, the blade wobbled. Following Eugene's will, the blade seemed to melt and then reshaped itself. An axe, or perhaps a hammer. Noir watched with wide eyes after having regenerated her head. The form was imperfect and vague. It was unclear what form it had taken moments before. But one thing was certain. The current Levantian was definitely not a sword. Answer. An axe. Noir laughed out loud and exclaimed as she opened her hands and struck the night sky. Whoosh. It seemed as if the darkness of the sky was being pushed back. Such was the force of the dark power. It was a mixture of various elements. Even as she unleashed raw dark power, she made use of the two demonies. Chains sprang from space and targeted Eugene. Invert. Full. Crush. Kneel. Kneel, Sienna chanted internally. Simply put, the power of the demon eye of fantasy manipulated perception. Until now, Noir had used this power combined with dreams, and now she was manipulating reality itself. It went beyond manipulating mere perception. These intuitive illusions would affect Eugene the moment they made contact. Sienna felt as if her head would burst and her intestines were being scraped out with a spoon. Currently, she was perceiving and blocking unrealized illusions. She was countering the chains of incarceration with chains of magic. I can do this, Sienna told herself. He would not run out of mana. As long as her consciousness held, she could draw magic from the infinite. Sienna glared at the night sky while gasping for breath. She had blocked the power of the demonies as much as possible. But the sheer brute force of the immense dark power was beyond her ability to stop. Ahaha. Noir laughed. She had thought it was an axe. But she was mistaken. Levantian was currently taking on the form of a hammer. It wasn't made of flames either. The blade itself had transformed into a hammer. This was different from before. The heavy blow from the hammer shattered Noir's dark power. Along with it, the night sky that had been pushed back broke into pieces. Still, wasn't I half right? Whispered Noir. The hammer transformed into an axe after smashing through the waves of dark power in the night sky. Eugene closed the distance between himself and Noir in an instant. Noir spread her arms as the axe aimed to lodge itself in Noir's chest. Crack. But despite being driven downwards, the axe did not fully split Noir in two. In fact, it failed to even reach her. The purple aura of dark power surrounding Noir transformed into hundreds of hands that caught the axe in its tracks. Although about half of the hands were crushed by the axe, Noir still managed to block Eugene's advance. Demon Eye of Fantasy? Sienna glared fiercely while swallowing blood. Noir had not used the Demon Eye of Fantasy to manipulate reality but had directly imbued her dark power with illusion. Who would have thought that was even possible? Sienna quickly maneuvered Mary to target Noir. Thump. However, Sienna's magic was interrupted mid-cast. An incredible amount of dark power caused Sienna to be flung backward through the air. Meanwhile, Eugene yanked the axe out of the wall of hands. Hundreds of hands were torn off in the process, and the blazing flames turned the lump of dark power into ash. But since Levantian hadn't directly struck Noir, she took no damage. It didn't matter if a large amount of dark power was burnt away. It paled in comparison to the ocean of near-infinite dark power Noir possessed. Down there, Noir whispered. Aren't you worried? She might be dead. She's not dead, Eugene spat. The blade stretched out. Ahaha. You trust in Sienna Meridian? Or perhaps you're counting on my kindness. After all, if I wanted to kill, I could have done it long ago. I chose not to kill, said Noir. It was true. There had been several opportunities for her to kill. From the moment Noir sent the invitation, she could have dominated the minds of her targets. The reason she hadn't killed them? She thought Hamel would be sad. It seemed like Hamel would become angry. She didn't want to corrupt Hamel's murderous intent into something meager like vengeance. This time it's a spear, right? You used a spear quite well. Noir stopped mid-sentence. No, she was wrong. The blade stretched out like a spear and then suddenly thickened. What is that? She couldn't help but wonder. Noir became shocked by what transpired next. What she thought was a spear had become a cannon barrel. Levantian had literally transformed into a glass cannon. Flames started to flicker at the mouth of the glass cannon. She thought it would emit flames, but it didn't. Instead, numerous small spheres of light poured out from the barrel. They were tiny spheres the size of fists. Noir knew what they were. She watched the spheres float around her and burst into laughter. Your attacks have become quite creative, she commented. Hundreds of eclipses exploded simultaneously. The sky was no longer night. It turned a blinding white. However, it was not a bright light but a conflagration that threatened to erase everything. The attack was focused on Noir. Is it because of those wings? Noir asked. She spread her arms wide with a radiant smile. Crackle. The barrier of dark power Noir had spread was instantly destroyed. Within the blaze, Noir's body drifted like a falling leaf, but she did not burn. She reinforced the barrier immediately before it was destroyed and pursued Eugene. The blinding conflagration that had lit up the sky all returned to Eugene. The blade of Levantian, which had once again taken the form of a sword, was layered with the fiery blaze. The empty sword had not been particularly effective against Noir, but it was different now. Levantian's firepower had undergone an upgrade with Eugene's resonance with the saints. And now, with the current stacks of the empty sword. This is dangerous, Noir muttered. Whoosh. The empty sword plunged into Noir. The miracle of the absolute strike, which had previously been ineffective against Noir, was now unleashed. The barrier around her was consumed by the flames. Noir imbued her remaining dark power with illusions. But no illusion could block the empty sword. Weapons, shields, armor, all were cut by the flames before they could fully manifest. She had to retreat. Just as she was about to act on her thoughts, she was stopped. Like, a chain appeared from behind and wrapped around Noir's ankle. So that's what you were aiming for, said Noir. She could see Sienna's fierce gaze among the debris of shattered buildings under the sky that had brightened before darkening again. Noir had hoped she would be out cold. But contrary to her expectations, Sienna had remained conscious. Her ankle was tied. The sure-hit empty sword was approaching. Any response would be slightly too late. It seemed inevitable. Noir spread her arms with a slight laugh. Just in time, she whispered. Whoosh. The empty sword slashed across Noir's chest. Her chest was cut wide. The flames seared the wound so that no blood spilled over. An open wound revealed the heart, and Eugene targeted it with his flames. It's not quite there. It lacks the realization, Noir whispered with a bright smile. The sparks advancing toward the heart suddenly extinguished. The blow had been shallow. Eugene bit his lip and pulled Levantine back. The sword transformed, adopting a shape for the quickest movement to stab directly at the heart. A dagger plunged into Noir's chest. Noir's hand blocked the dagger. Crunch. He managed to pierce her palm, but the dagger could not advance any further. Before Levantine could change shape again, Noir's fingers clenched around both the hilt of the knife and Eugene's hand. A real feel for death, she said. Blood dripped from Noir's lips. She relished it, the taste of blood filling her mouth. It was a sensation distinct from the throbbing in her chest and hands, different from the emotions she felt. It was a pure heat of pain. Let's both become desperate, Hamel, Noir said. Crack. She snapped the chain that bound her leg. She severed the hand that had stopped Levantine as well. She burst into laughter. Just as Eugene was about to attack again, Noir grabbed the wound on her chest with her remaining hand. Ah! With a boisterous laugh, the wound gaped open. With a dramatic flourish, instead of blood, a multitude of Giabella coins burst from Noir's seared wound. It wasn't intestines or bones. It was coins, too many to count, assaulting Eugene. What is this? Eugene was shocked. He had faced all sorts of attacks from Noir, but never had he imagined coins spurting from a wound. And these coins were unusually heavy and forceful. Eugene swung Levantine stacked with the empty sword while grinding his teeth. Whoosh! A multicolored cascade of coins disintegrated in the flames. Noir was nowhere to be seen. Immediately, Eugene expanded his senses to locate her. Up! He heard a scream from below. It was Sienna's voice. He didn't have time to check on her condition. Eugene immediately turned his gaze upwards. Whoosh! One Giabella face was plummeting down, one that had been perched atop a casino roof. He hadn't forgotten the earlier incident. He knew that facing it head-on might drag him into an inescapable explosion. Eugene instantly moved out of the blast radius and launched an eclipse. Boom! The Giabella face exploded like fireworks. Where's Noir? Eugene thought immediately. Where had she gone in the brief moment? Had she fled? No, that couldn't be it. Was she buying time to heal her wounds? Though shallow, Levantine had undoubtedly inflicted a wound on Noir. A little deeper and it might have reached her heart. It wasn't a fatal wound, but not one that could be ignored either. Other injuries might heal instantly, but a wound from Levantine was hard to recover from. He couldn't afford to give her time to recover. Don't worry. The voice came from somewhere. Eugene immediately turned toward the source of the sound. It was the center of the city, the place where he first encountered Noir. The city was now completely collapsed. Noir was there by the lone Giabella face still hanging in the sky. She wore a bright smile. Didn't I tell you, Hamel? Let's both become desperate, she said. The wound on her chest pleased her. The savage, searing heat felt perfect. Her left hand was now regenerated, and Noir gently caressed Giabella face with it. Eugene half expected a straightforward charge, so he was surprised when it didn't come. Instead, the crowned Giabella face, Noir's residence, suddenly soared high into the sky. With passion, she declared. Boom 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 boom. The Giabella face mouth opened and loud music poured out. Its glassy, large eyes emitted multicolored lights like a disco ball, coloring the starless night sky with vibrant hues. Meanwhile, the darkness melded into the night focused on Noir. With joy, she said. The dark power enveloping the entire city flowed into Noir. She gathered all remnants of the city's dreams, forsaking their restoration to concentrate every bit of power from her domain into herself. Thump! A loud throb emanated from the gaping wound on her chest. Noir leaned back while caressing the wound. Aha, aha! This is too much, she exclaimed. The power amassed was beyond even Noir's reckoning. A lifetime of power was being consolidated into one physical body. Crack crackle. Fissures spread across the sky around Noir. Eugene stared with shock. He could not advance rashly. The same was true for Sienna, who, supporting her tattered legs with her hands, barely managed to remain standing. She swallowed hard. By God! Both the saints and Sienna involuntarily sought divine intervention. They felt as if everything that had transpired until now was merely a fleeting dream. They now faced a sinister power that sent chills down their spines and made their limbs tingle. Thud thud. The buildings of the city began to collapse under the overwhelming weight pressing down from the sky. Noir spread her wings wide while the space around her wavered and distorted. Boom. It was just the unfurling of her wings, yet the city collapsed completely under the impact, which reverberated even beyond the city limits. Rhaenyra was also hit by the shockwave. She screamed as she plummeted. Sienna, who had quickly formed a barrier, was also overwhelmed by the shock and vomited blood. Eugene held Levantian upright. The bright, burning flames cut through the darkness. Prominence, the wings of light, the sanctuary he formed, all resisted Noir's overwhelming display of force. "Don't you also want more?" whispered Noir. Though he heard it, Eugene couldn't respond. An attack from above slammed him into the ground. He did not kneel. He endured, aiming for the next opportunity. He swung his sword, but it did not reach his target. Laughter echoed, growing distant, then suddenly near again. Crunch. He was smashed downward, but this time he was sent flying backward. Blood surged from Eugene's mouth. "Hamel!" "Eugene!" The saint's cries echoed. The wings of light wrapped around Eugene on its own. His crushed organs regenerated. The eyes that had burst from the internal shock also regenerated. His vision was once again filled with light. Bam 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 bam. The music that filled the air seemed fit only for a club in Giabella City. Multicolored lights danced wildly in the sky. All this chaos disoriented the mind. "Shit," Eugene cursed while spitting blood. He was simply too strong. He had never struggled this much since gaining awareness of his divinity and acquiring the divine sword. The specter had been strong. Gavid had been strong. But neither had been as overwhelming as this. Even with the aid of Sienna and the saints, he couldn't grasp any advantage over Noir. When he had managed a shallow cut and landed an attack, he had felt slight relief. He had felt as if he had taken a step towards victory. But then he had ended up in this state. He had been toyed with by Noir at every turn ever since entering this nightmare. Realization, Eugene thought. Eugene staggered to his feet. Noir wasn't attacking him anymore. Amid the dizzying colors, he saw Noir, the concentration of her dark power, now a deep black dress that adorned her. But the cleavage that the dress revealed sported the wound on her chest from before. The wound. Despite having gathered all her power, the wound had not healed. But the inside of the wound was invisible. Where her heart should be, only a profound darkness remained. Sensing his gaze, Noir smiled broadly. She deliberately raised her hand to trace the wound. Her fingers moved higher and gently touched a necklace. Eugene ignored her provocation. He had baptized the saints. The current form of Levantian possessed greater firepower than ever before, even compared to when he had used ignition. The sanctuary itself was strengthened. The range of miracles he could perform had also expanded. Yet he was still lacking in firepower. What should I do? Eugene thought. He came to realize that the same kind of battle as before would not hold up now. I've reached her a few times. But each tangible strike had been shallow. Can I reach her again? It didn't feel as if she would allow even a shallow strike now. Right. He inhaled deeply, the smell of blood tingling his nostrils. I've already realized it. Firepower wasn't what he was lacking. Noir might only now be feeling her mortality, but Eugene had never been in this city without truly feeling the presence of defeat and death. I need to be more desperate. Eugene was on the brink. A slight tilt could end him. No, in truth he was already deeply inclined toward death. He needed to change the course. I am weaker than Noir Giabella right now. Acknowledging this truth simplified what he had to do. What he had been lacking was resolve. Noir was right, he had not been desperate enough. He needed to be desperate to overcome defeat, death, and the brink. All of it. I will kill Noir Giabella before I die. Eugene clutched his chest with his left hand. Chapter 565. Night 5. Boom 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 boom. The clamorous music echoed in his ears. Bottom. The beating of his heart swallowed the music. The multicolored lights of the Giabella face transformed the night sky, yet they were consumed by an even brighter, more intense light. Ah, Noir moaned. Now was the moment. Noir gripped her necklace with a dreamy smile. The dream she had hoped would never end had concluded. It had felt as if the night would never end, as if it would never welcome the dawn. Yet the moment was near for an ending. She felt death. She had become as desperate as she had yearned to be. Hamel felt the same as Noir. Ignition. Noir had always loved that. It was a technique with reckless abandon that cared only for the moment, not what came after. An essence of murderous intent that sought to destroy the opponent while sacrificing one's own life. He would kill. He would kill no matter what. Even if he died, he would kill. That resolve emanated from Hamel as he bowed his head. The throbbing beat of his heart synced with the music and accelerated further. Crackle crackle. The flames engulfing Eugene surged more violently, sparking deep red currents. The flames of prominence soared higher. The wings of light resonating with the saints also grew larger. The saints screamed in unison. The surging divine power, the ceaseless explosions. All of it became intense pain for the saints. Yet Eugene did not ask them to endure. We must endure. Instead, it was the saints who cried out. They were deeply resonating with Eugene now. They felt the pain of ignition and knew that the agony they were experiencing was only a fraction of the whole. This ignition was different from any before. It transcended just igniting the core or the cosmos or even the divinity itself. Eugene's aspirations and miracles sought beyond that. They had seen ignition being used several times. It was a suicidal tactic that wreaked havoc on the user's body. Honestly, Eugene had never liked using ignition. He detested the circumstances that necessitated such a mad technique. He had thought several times that it would be better to retreat rather than use ignition. But he knew the truth. There was no situation where retreating without using ignition was an option. If he did not employ it now, there would be no opportunity for retreat. If not now, he would never win. Now too that was the case. As ignition accelerated, the saints also increasingly realized the presence of Noir Giabella. Noir Giabella was a distant, overwhelming being who alone could crush a city with her mere presence. She was capable of obliterating the continent and challenging the demon king of incarceration if she truly unleashed her power. He was truly an evil god. But Noir felt closer now. She was not as distant as before nor as overwhelming. The sense of inevitable defeat was wavering. If Eugene did not advance now, if he retreated, he might never again reach this point. God might be non-existent. Both Anise and Christina had once thought so because, despite fervent prayers, they had never heard the voice of God, and their prayers had not saved the world. But now they thought differently. The indifferent, merciless light had ultimately proven real. While it might forsake the hopes of its devotees, the light sought the salvation of the world itself. Their God was here in a desperate attempt to save the world, to overturn the predetermined apocalypse and vanquish all demon kings. Right now, the saints felt the presence of their God more closely than ever before. Eugene's divinity surged. His divine might expanded. Yet it was still insufficient. The vessel was too small. With his current capacity, Eugene could not overcome the situation. He yearned more deeply. He craved a miracle and thus caused one to occur. Divine power resonated with his wish, and an endless surge of divine power filled Eugene's body, filling the universe near his heart. He beheld the distant sea, a boundary that did not permit the footsteps of living beings. There he saw the light that had existed for eons, the god of giants he once considered his friend in the ancient past, and the ancient gods who had allowed themselves to be devoured by the god of giants at the brink of destruction. They had carried on as the light. It's not enough, Eugene thought. He could not contain all the divine power. He could only draw it out using Levantian as a conduit. Yet even that was not sufficient. The sword would never break, but Eugene's body could not withstand the immense divine power. But now he could bear it. He lifted Levantian. Within the flames there was a blade of glass. Without hesitation, Eugene turned Levantian's blade. Whoosh! Levantian plunged into Eugene's chest. The glass blade, melting into flames and light, flowed into Eugene. Thus it was completed. The divinity of the light became one with Eugene. The vessel expanded to the brink of shattering and finally broke. Yet the light that had filled it did not spill out but mingled within Eugene. Ah. Noir gripped her necklace while letting out a moan. She felt a force that would inevitably lead to mutual destruction. The miracle that Hamel now sought was solely to kill Noir. Noir felt the same. All she desired was to kill Hamel. If she did not kill him, she would be killed by him. Either way, death was inevitable. Come, Hamel, she whispered. She extended her hand, which wore a ring engraved with Hamel's name. Come to kill me, she asked. Eugene leaned forward. His flailing wings lay down beside him. His hands grasped the ground. The simple power of the annihilation hammer, to push away whatever it touched, to shatter it and to explode it, that power unfolded through Eugene's hands. Boom. The ground was pushed, shattered, and exploded. All of it became a violent propulsion. Thus, Eugene became a beam of light. A dark red line split the darkness. Crush. Noir and Eugene collided. The hands that had reached out gently were crushed. From Noir's mouth burst blood and fragments of her innards amidst the impact. It felt as if she had collided with the entire world. Ah. The pain was enough to knock her unconscious. But Noir laughed madly. She held her crumbling body together with dark power and twisted her waist. "You're like a beast." Noir laughed as she shouted. Crack. Her elongated legs were entwined with dark power. A vortex of dark power accompanied her kick. A flashing light blocked the front of the vortex. The power that Eugene unfolded was the spear forest, but unlike before, the forest did not spew flames. Instead, countless types of weapons surged. Each was forged of flames and light from divine power. Noir's dark power was blocked by numerous divine artifacts. Noir kicked back the darkness and leaped backward. Her two demonies lit up. The chains of incarceration grasped the space around her, and the demon eye of fantasy replicated Eugene's attack. Crush. The entangled weapons shattered and divine power mixed with dark power. The sword force split everything in two. It was a shallow cut, but it sliced through Noir's black dress and left a line across her pale stomach. There was no blood spilled. Noir laughed heartily as she restored her dress. "It hurts," she squealed. The wound on her stomach did not heal. Wincing from the sharp pain, Noir laughed even louder and then slammed her hand downward. Crack. Eugene's knees buckled under the force. It was heavy. He clenched his teeth and swallowed blood, then straightened his knees once more. Crush. It was unclear whether he was stepping on the ground or the sky, but he pushed forward and leaped ahead. Ah! The saints screamed. The divine heat they felt even became flames that amplified Eugene's divine power. Eugene swept his hand through the air. Swish. Where his hand passed, darkness was erased and light and flames emerged. Hundreds of divine swords appeared from that space, all aimed at Noir. The ground, the darkness, no, the space itself shattered into fragments. A part of the world blocked the barrage of divine swords. The chains of incarceration bound it all together, and the demon eye of fantasy sent a dream that turned a part of the world into a mere fantasy. This sequence of events unfolded in the blink of an eye. A pale hand elegantly tapped the darkness. What followed was anything but elegant. Brutal violence engulfed Eugene. He didn't bother to identify what form the attack took. The scene was too bright. His mind was too bright. There was no need to see and judge to find an answer. His intuition, now one with his divinity, allowed him to accurately perceive and counter the attack. Freebnol.com. Sienna staggered to her feet and watched everything unfold. Being a divine being didn't mean being equal. At this moment, Sienna realized she could never intervene in this battle. No matter how infinite her magic had become, it was infinitely fragile against the forces clashing before her. It's almost. Sienna couldn't complete her thought. She swallowed hard as she watched Eugene. He wasn't wielding Levantine now. Rather, countless swords were being created from his gestures. The same divine sword that had defeated the new demon king of fury, Iris, and the incarnation of destruction were being born and shattered repeatedly like cheap swords. He wasn't just forming swords either. Now Eugene was wielding every weapon he had handled since his days as Hamel. It was as if he was the incarnation of war itself. Simultaneously, Eugene was light. War and light illuminated the night created by Noir. It was undoubtedly a battlefield of myths. Sienna unconsciously clutched her chest. She felt something, but it wasn't defeat or helplessness. What she saw broadened Sienna's perspective. It enriched the magic she desired and the infinity she pursued. "I can almost understand it," Sienna muttered softly. Eugene had once said it. War belonged to Agaroth and the light was something handed down. But apart from that, what Eugene Lionheart's divinity was. "I'm creating it." That was all Eugene had said. He had not told her what his divinity was. But she had grasped it without hearing it from him. She could almost grasp what his divinity, unrelated to the light or war, truly was. He had poured everything into this battle, even risking his own life, all for a desire he harbored deeply. It's close, Eugene thought. No longer was it far, nor was it shallow. It was near. If he reached out, he could touch it. But merely touching was not enough. He needed to delve deeper. With a rumble, Eugene's left foot pressed down on the ground. His right foot shot forward forcefully, shattering the earth beneath. Crunch. The divine power contained in his body was compressed to its limit. It groaned as if his body was on the verge of shattering. Eugene twisted his waist and raised both arms, his empty hands grasping the light and flames that enveloped him. It's close, he thought again. He was close to Noir Giabella and just as close to death. Whose death would it be? Which of them would die first? That was still unclear. But the reality of it was vivid. With a whoosh, the flames and light grasped by Eugene transformed into a colossal sword. What do I desire? Eugene asked himself. He desired the death of Noir Giabella. He longed for the end of a long, impossibly complex relationship that couldn't merely be called enmity. He longed for the end of this dream, of this night. He yearned for a brilliant dawn. He yearned for victory. The noisy music had long since faded away. The lights spewed by the Giabella face, now a mirror ball, had been swept away by other distractions. Not even the sounds of the battlefield, crashing, bursting and breaking, reached him now. All Eugene could hear were the painful groans and prayers of the saints and Noir's laughter. He swung his sword. The night was split. The laughter abruptly stopped. It did not transform into groans or screams. It simply ceased. Noir was flung into the sky. The impact was so immense that she couldn't even emit any sounds. Blood spurted from Noir's mouth, yet silently. Eugene saw her blood-streaked lips curve into a smile. He smiled just the same. His lips were also smeared with blood. His wounds were healing, yet the blood continued to flow. The pain he felt did not subside either. It felt as if his soul was oxidizing. Because their lives clashed, their ends drew nearer to each other. But it was not over yet. There was more they could do. They both smiled equally. They had collided and drifted apart, but both had charged at each other again. Ha! Ha! His labored breath mixed with laughter. They began to laugh again. The infinite dark power, the eternal nightmare, was being negated. The light burned the dark power and brought down the infinite into the finite. The nightmare shattered into pieces and turned into reality. It was endearing. It was unbearable because it was so endearing. This act with Hamel was profoundly endearing. Now she could truly imagine it. The very certain and near reality vividly illustrated death. Hamel, Noir called out. Even the longest night came to an end. How much longer could they go on? How much longer could they fight? He had slashed numerous times. He had burned her numerous times. Each time death drew closer. And inevitably the first to die would be. How about you? Noir asked. He hated the thought. Noir's arms flung open wide. The miracle had reached her. Her dark power surged violently. The lips splattered with blood twisted into a smile. Light pierced through Noir, yet the darkness remained unbroken. Flat. Noir's left eye, the demon eye of divine glory, burst of its own accord, overwhelmed by a power far exceeding its limits. All of Noir's dark power transformed into chains. The demon eye of fantasy alone shone brightly. The chains wrapped around the world, embodying the same nightmare for both Eugene and Noir. The seemingly eternal night and the dawn that would follow were denied. The worst nightmare dawned. Scarlet twilight filled the world. Noir opened her heart wider. Crunch. The divine sword pierced her chest and twisted further. It narrowly missed her heart. The roiling flames tried but failed to consume it. "I, Hamel," Noir whispered softly. Eugene's face contorted in pallor. They were in an incarcerated space, a twilight similar to a nightmare. Eugene knew what was to unfold next. "Do you feel the same death as I do?" she questioned. The twilight's light enveloped everything. Eugene. The world encircled by chains melted in the burst of red light from within. Sienna screamed as she flew towards it, understanding what Noir had just done. Noir created a world just for the two of them, ensuring the force did not disperse. She opened her own heart for that brutally simplistic attack. And then it burst. She had caused her dark power to rampage. It was self-destruction. Even Noir, the caster of that attack, could not escape death. So they would die together? For their mutual end? She had known Noir was mad but never thought it would be to this extent. Sienna suddenly stopped. She could see Eugene in the melting crimson light. He was alive, not dead. But his condition was dire. Eugene slumped down, blood gushing out as he sat. Prominence crumbled into ashes. The lone remaining wing of light gradually dimmed as well. Eugene barely lifted his trembling hand to the side. The wing of light vanished completely, and an unconscious Christina appeared. He barely caught her with his arm, but Eugene's body could not withstand it. The arm supporting her snapped. "Your arm!" Sienna screamed as blood poured from the severed arm. Eugene looked at it through blurred vision. "How long has it been since I last lost an arm?" Eugene murmured with a chuckle. "Keep it safe. I'll reattach it later." Hey, are you okay? Are you really okay?" asked Sienna. "I'm not okay, but alive," Eugene muttered. After bleeding out more, Eugene staggered to his feet. He had nearly died. He had barely managed to slice through the nightmare and burn the chains. If it weren't for the sanctuary and miracles, he would have truly died. Having nearly died and not dying felt almost the same. Eugene looked up at the sky. The pitch-black night sky looked as if it might collapse at any moment. Eugene sensed more somewhere out there. Soon then, Eugene chuckled and clutched the torn stump of his left arm. Chapter 566, Night 6, Bonus Image. "Just stay still," Sienna found herself saying. It was the first time since the fight with Raizakia that Eugene appeared so severely injured. There had been worse fights some 300 years ago, but back then they were all weaker and less adept. Sienna approached Eugene with a pale, stricken face. "I'm alive," Eugene muttered while glaring at the sky. Eugene wasn't dead, and neither was Noir Giabella. She was out there somewhere in the night sky waiting for him. "Isn't that obvious? I know too. That whore is still alive. But you don't need to fight anymore." Sienna clenched her robe as she spoke. It was truly a grim sight, not just his severed arm either. His internal injuries looked severe too. Though acquiring divinity had enabled him to regenerate most wounds at this moment, that was impossible for Eugene. This was the price of overdriving his divinity. The backlash from ignition had just hit him. "Just sit here quietly with your severed arm. Soon either Christina or Anise will come to their senses. Yes, get the elixir." Sienna muttered. "Sienna," Eugene called out. "You're not worried about me, are you? I might be injured, but it's not even a scratch compared to yours. And that whore is just as badly hurt. So," continued Sienna. "Sienna," Eugene called out once more. "Don't call my name. Just shut up and rest. I could kill Noir Giabella in her current state." She couldn't finish her sentence. Sienna's lips were pursed as she glared at Eugene. Had he really heeded her demand not to call her name? Eugene didn't call out to Sienna anymore. But his gaze was far heavier than any words he could have spoken. "The fight is practically over anyway. Both of you are alive, but you have... here. I can finish this," said Sienna. "No," retorted Eugene. Sienna glared at him silently. "This is between me and Noir Giabella. Only one of us can end it." "Not you," said Eugene. "Ha. Why should I indulge in your sentimentality? You can hardly stand, yet you insist on fighting," spat Sienna. "If you act on your own and ignore my wishes, I will hate you for the rest of my life," Eugene said, flashing a faint smile. "Really? Even if you cry and beg, I won't forgive you." "If you die, there will be nothing for you to hate," Sienna retorted. "I won't die," Eugene assured. There was no use talking to Eugene at times like this. Sienna wanted desperately to convince him, but she knew it was futile and sighed deeply. "All right, I understand. Killing that whore personally is that important to you. But how do you intend to do it? You can barely move, let alone fight," Sienna inquired. "I'll make it possible." With those words, Eugene placed his hand on his chest. Not understanding his gesture at first, Sienna blinked in surprise. Eventually, as she grasped what Eugene intended to do, she gasped and reached out her hand. "You crazy fool," she shouted. Eugene's fingers brushed his heart just before the magic seized him. Thump. A faint heartbeat surged with heavy force, reviving the dying embers. "Hey!" Sienna shouted. Until now, Eugene had only used ignition consecutively during the Raizakia incident. Back then he had pushed Raizakia to the brink of death alone but had collapsed from exhaustion just moments before finishing the task. A second consecutive rampage had completely damaged his heart and core, almost killing him then. If not for the miracle of the World Tree, he would have indeed died. "It's different this time," Eugene said in a calm voice. The previous ignition had caused a surge of divine power, but this time it was purely a mana surge. Therefore it wouldn't kill him from the recoil like during the Raizakia incident. Of course that was just the theory. The backlash from surging divine power was merely a sealing of divine energy, which hardly burdened his body. But now, could his battered body withstand the recoil of this ignition? He hadn't thought about it. Noir too wouldn't be in great shape, but there was no chance of his victory unless he caused his mana to rampage. Eugene quickly drew an elixir from his cloak and downed it as first aid. You. Sienna was at a loss for words. Her lips were quivering. Eugene flashed her a grin and then kicked off the ground, soaring into the sky. "If you die, I'll die too." Sienna screamed after him into the night sky. "Ah." Moore let out a short sigh while fluttering through the undulating night. "I thought dying together in each other's arms would be a beautiful end," she said. "It could have been. They were so close. But it hadn't happened." Moore chuckled while massaging her chest. In truth, Hamel's response had been excellent. Just as her bomb of dark power was about to explode, Hamel had reacted in the best way possible. "The beautiful ending I envisioned wasn't beautiful for you, I guess," she muttered. Was the grip too weak? Or had she hesitated at the last moment? Perhaps it was a bit of both. The explosion had been impulsive. She had acted out of a moment's impulse. Perhaps it had not been passionate enough? Or perhaps she had hesitated at the end. Either way, it was fine whether her grip was too weak or she had hesitated. All of it made this moment sweeter. Noir removed her hand from her chest and placed it above her lips. Cough. Blood trickled from her slightly parted lips. The failed explosion had severely injured Noir as well. She had lost the demon eye of divine glory. A significant amount of her dark power had evaporated in the explosion as well. Her injuries were severe. Her chest was slashed and pierced. Pain radiated near her heart, and her tattered wings trembled as if they might crumble any moment. Yet Noir was still alive. She was alive and flying in the sky. "We could have dreamed the same dream," she lamented. Noir's smile was visible through her blood-stained face. Below she could see Hamel staggering. His condition was just as dire. He had lost his left arm. His ignition had ended. His prominence was depleted of energy. He was no longer resonating with the saints. Even that seemingly endless pool of divine power was now unperceivable. Yet neither of them had died. They were still alive. However, they both sensed that the end was near. The dream, the night, was coming to a close. Moore chuckled softly as she looked down below. Flames were visible. Hamel was coming. However, these flames were different from before. There was no trace of divine power or divinity, yet they burned fiercely. Moore realized what Eugene had done. Without any divine power left, he had ignited his mana once more. "You went to such lengths just for me?" Moore said lovingly. She found the flames, devoid of any divine sensation, endlessly endearing. How could she not love this sight of him racing towards death, destroying his own body? Moore smiled brightly as she caressed her throat. "Hamel," she called his name tenderly with blood-stained red lips. "My Hamel." She could feel his presence even more intensely in his current state without any divine power. His was a presence unmarred by past lives. Yes, Noor nodded with a smile. He was the first man Noor Giabella had ever loved. He was the man she could not help but love. Ah. Noor sighed sweetly as she surveyed her own body. Everything was a mess. Her chest was slashed and punctured and her body was covered in wounds. The clothes she had dressed up in now looked no better than rags. Noor conjured a small hand mirror to inspect her face. "Ugly," she commented. Though her face was still beautiful, Noor was not pleased with it, not with the burst and hollow socket in her left eye, not with the blood-covered face, not with the burst lips. She disliked everything about it. This face, this condition, it was not acceptable. Hamel. There was no need for him to intervene. As Sienna Meridian had shouted, he could have allowed her to finish the battle. That was the logical choice. That was the sensible choice. Sienna was more than capable of finishing off Noir in her current state. Yet Hamel had come himself. Despite being unable to fight, he had used ignition one more time. He had come to finish everything with his own hands. Therefore Noor had to meet Hamel with her best effort. She giggled and stirred up her dark power. Her left eye regenerated and filled the socket. The scars on her face disappeared and a layer of light makeup was applied. Although the wound on her chest remained beyond repair, the other injuries healed. The tattered clothes transformed into something new. Thus, Noor achieved a beautiful appearance befitting their final encounter. She rotated the mirror to examine her reflection and, satisfied, set it down with a smile. "Hamel," she called out. The theme park was the greatest in Helmuth, no, the greatest in the continent. It opened just a few years ago. Giabella City was a place of pleasure where one could indulge in every conceivable entertainment. It was a city that embodied all of Noor Giabella's dreams and ideals. The mirror fell to the ruins. Whoosh. Down below, the still intact amusement park lit up. The carousel creaked into motion and the Ferris wheel started to turn, its lights blinking weakly. Noor murmured softly as she watched, "There are so many things I want to do with you in this city." Still with his hand on his chest, Eugene drew forth Levantine. It was no longer a divine blade now that its divine power was sealed. However, he could still use it as a sword. But Eugene slipped Levantine back into his cloak and drew another sword instead. It was a plain, rugged sword. It was a sword with no legends or mysteries. Whoosh. The flames of the white flame formula enveloped the blade. To gamble in the casino, to drink in the bars, to shop in the department stores, at the swimming pool, the zoo, the amusement park, continued Noir. The blade, wrapped in flames, was directed at Noir. Whoosh. The flickering flames settled down calmly. He was not in a hurry. He slowly manifested sword force and enveloped the blade. "There were so many things I wanted to do. I could talk forever and it wouldn't suffice. Yes, but it's okay. The thing I wanted to do the most, I'm doing it now," said Noir. Eugene could not manifest divine power. But he didn't need it. He knew it instinctively. He wouldn't need divine might, Agarotha's power, or the divine power against the current Noir. He could reach her regardless of what he held in his hand. What mattered was his will to reach. "Ahaha." Noir laughed as she observed the sword aimed at her, the flames that had settled down despite numerous overlaps, and beyond them the golden eyes emitting a fierce glow. He saw Hamel. He was the sword forged from his murderous intent. "You really are sentimental," she commented. There was no need to ask why Hamel had chosen a rugged and ordinary sword instead of Levantine. She didn't intend to ask and she didn't need to know. The clear and beautiful murderous intent was Hamel's answer, the words Noor desperately wanted to hear. And so romantic. At the end of her whisper, Noor moved forward. Instead of her left hand, which wore the ring, she extended her right hand. She drew a murderous intent as heavy as the overwhelming love she felt. All the dark power Noor could muster moved with that intent. "Hamel." Noir whispered his name as sweetly as one might to a lover lying beside her in bed, yet with the same intent as one faced their nemesis. Eugene slashed. He swung his sword wildly. Though the flames enveloping the ordinary iron sword had calmed, the swordplay met with fierce murderous intent. The creaking of his body, the strain on his heart, none of these made him hesitate with the sword. Noir laughed. The clear, ringing laughter mingled with the sounds of clashing swords throughout the night. That too was slashed. Eugene slashed again and again. He cut through the night that seemed like it would never end, through the sweet, poignant nightmare. Noir swung her hand. The shredded night became her claws. He parried an incoming attack. She moved forward into the very heart of the unyielding murderous intent. Remorse, regret, despair, none of these weighed down her sword. Eugene Lionheart. Hamel Dinah's. He did not stop his sword. Dark power and flames intertwined, burst, and scattered. They were raced again. No matter how many times their attacks were blocked, their intent to kill did not dull. Eugene thought. The scattered dark power once again became a blade that brushed past. Eugene ignored it. He couldn't afford to block each one and he did not have the leisure to do so. He had activated ignition forcibly. All the mana available to him was transformed into flames, all poured into the sword. He only looked forward. He only saw Noor Giabella. Every nerve was focused solely on reaching her. Destined to end this way. Their past lives, the connections they shared from before Agaroth and Arya. None of that mattered. As long as he was Hamel and she was Noir, this was their inevitable conclusion. Do not dull. Do not become weighed down. Do not hold regrets. Do not hesitate. All the emotions that he would inevitably confront were irrelevant at this moment. Thus Eugene's murderous intent was pure. He approached more purely. He knew. She could feel it. She could feel how much Hamel wanted to kill her right now. She could feel how pure and upright his murderous intent was. That was why she laughed. She couldn't bear it without laughing. I feel the same, Noir thought. Because she loved Hamel, she wanted to dream an eternal dream with him. Because she loved Hamel, she wanted to kill him with her own hands. Because she loved Hamel, she wanted to die at his hands. She felt death. He felt Hamel. This moment was the sweetest dream of Noir's life. They were close now, too close to retreat, not that either of them wished to. A reach away and they could touch. Their gazes met, each contemplating the deadly completion of the other. Noir stretched out her hand and Eugene thrust his sword. It's me. Crack. Noir's hand scattered the flames and shattered Eugene's sword. The fragments scattered across the night sky. Seeing this, Noir smiled brightly. In the end, Eugene's sword had not penetrated her. It had reached her but failed to deliver death. I am the one who will kill you. She had reached the conclusion she had so desperately desired. Throughout her journey to this day, Noir had experienced a tumult of emotions. Noir Giabella, once known in ages past as Arya, had been called the Twilight Witch, the War God's Saint. She had suffered after coming to realize this fact. She suffered after having to acknowledge things she did not want to know. She grappled with an identity that was not entirely her own, shaken by memories and emotions that did not belong to her. It only deepened love and hate. The realization that her love for Hamel and her feelings towards him were not entirely her own tormented her. She despised their past lives. Yet she could never let go of her love for Hamel. He was a man she could not help but love. Thus today she had destroyed Hamel with all her might, hoping to dream an eternal dream, wishing they could die together. The end they reached after surpassing everything was as fatally sweet and venomous as any. The emotions that would follow this conclusion, regret, loss, and grief, would be incomparably greater than any she had previously imagined. Perhaps she would be broken beyond recovery. No, she was certain of it. Noir would be shattered. She might never smile again, might never dream again. But it did not matter. A world without Hamel was not worth living in. That was enough. She did not like the twilight. He did not like the dawn. Thus, this sweet night would draw to a close as an eternal nightmare. Aha! Was it the end? It was not over. Noir laughed unwittingly. As the fragments of the sword scattered, Eugene twisted his body. From his wide-open cloak, a sword hilt protruded. It was the same as before, an unremarkable, plain, ordinary sword. It had always been this way. He treated weapons too harshly. Breaking a weapon during battle was not uncommon for you. If one sword broke, you would simply draw another and continue fighting. Hamel was such a man. I am satisfied. She was satisfied that she could kill Hamel. Satisfied that she could kill him like this. But you weren't. Even now Hamel did not give up. He did not hesitate. I was lacking. Hamel did not wish to die together with her. He did not wish to lose. In this moment after killing Hamel, Noir envisioned what would come next. The despair of being left alone, destroyed. But not Hamel. He was still looking at Noir even now. His pure, murderous intent did not hesitate with regret or reluctance. His sword approached her. His desire rekindled the flames. Noir, smiling brightly, spread her arms wide. So you really want to kill me that badly? Their bodies overlapped. The sword pierced her heart. Chapter 567, Night 7. Bonus image. Time seemed to have stopped, and for a brief moment he wished it truly had. The sky was pitch black, devoid of moon or stars. The clamorous music had long ceased, and the lights of Giabellaface no longer shone. The carousel and Ferris wheel stood still. In the heart of the quiet night, Eugene and Noir were intertwined. Eugene looked at Noir with quivering eyes. She was smiling brightly, her lips streaming with blood. He saw the gaping wound in her chest where the sword remained embedded. This time the strike was not shallow. It hadn't missed its mark. The plain sword had pierced Noir's heart precisely. He noticed the necklace, now red with the blood that spurted from her wound. Unknowingly, Eugene swallowed his breath, wishing he could turn his gaze away. Noir's hand moved. Her trembling hand reached toward Eugene. It was possible that she still had strength left in her. Despite having driven her to this point and piercing her heart, she was still the queen of the night demons. Perhaps to her, death still felt strange and distant. Ahaha. Her bloodied left hand touched Eugene's face, leaving streaks of red on his cheek. Noir chuckled as she moved her hand downwards. She slowly caressed Eugene's throat. Haha. She stopped. Noir did not grip his throat. She didn't dig her nails into his neck or tear it open. Instead, she touched him with the gentleness and delicateness of handling a fragile piece of art. She saw Eugene's eyes tremble with each gentle touch. She saw his cheeks twitch and his lips contort. Hamel, she called out. Her lips, stained red with blood, parted. Noir whispered with a mischievous smile. In such a beautiful moment, why do you wear such an expression? Everything about that expression was satisfying to her. Noir chuckled and moved her right hand, groping towards the hand that held the sword hilt. Such an awkward finish isn't like you, she commented. Her dispersing strength wasn't used to attack Eugene. Instead, with a playful smile, Noir pulled on Eugene's hand. Thump. The sword plunged deeper. Eugene and Noir grew even closer. Blood welled from her open lips, and his face contorted further. Ah! It looked as if he might cry at any moment. It was a face unbecoming of Hamel. But it didn't matter. Noir closed her eyes. She could feel a blissful satisfaction. She could no longer fly, nor did she feel the need to. Noir's body began to fall limply from the sky. He could have just let go, but Eugene didn't. If he had both arms, he might have held the sword and supported Noir's back, but now only his right arm remained. So he chose to release the sword. He pulled her into his embrace while grasping Noir's hand. Whoosh! Eugene's cloak transformed and enveloped them both. She felt a comforting warmth in her rapidly cooling body. She felt the tremble of the hand she held. Their hands separated. He reached out and supported Noir's waist. Fully. They fell slowly. Eugene said nothing. Noir buried her face in Eugene's chest so his expression remained unseen. Yet he did not look up. Eugene found the moment perfect. He truly wished that time could just stop right there. But no matter how desperately he wished, time did not stop. Even a leisurely fall had to eventually conclude upon reaching the ground. Eugene's feet touched the earth. He held Noir for a moment longer before letting out a long sigh and gently laying her down on the ground. Ahaha. Her heart had been pierced by the sword. The long blade had passed through her body and protruded from her back. Despite this, when her back touched the ground, she felt no pain from the sword being pushed or caught. You're surprisingly gentle and kind, unlike how you look, she remarked. He had broken the sword hilt beforehand, when he held her in his embrace, ensuring she wouldn't feel more pain when they landed. Noir chuckled as she looked up at Eugene. Didn't you think I could strike back? She teased. Yes, Eugene responded softly. You could have if you had tried. If you wanted to. Even when you tried to self-destruct. Even when I plunged the sword into your heart. Ah, that's different, Hamel. It's not that I didn't. I couldn't. The self-destruction. Hey, your determination was stronger than I anticipated. I was too complacent even at the end. Noir paused and closed her eyes. It was the same in that moment. I was content, but you were not. Hamel, you hoped to kill me until the very end. That's all there was to it. Your desire was stronger than mine. You wanted me so desperately. Frubuvel.cm. Silence followed. In the end, that's what it was. I hesitated at the last moment. I had regrets. I was content just in that moment. In the end, it turned out just as I said, didn't it? Noir said. She smiled broadly as she opened her eyes. Eugene's face was visible to her. His expression was unchanged from before, no different from when they were in the nightmare. He looked like he might cry at any moment. He was struggling to hold back his emotions. Even though he had achieved the victory he longed for, he was not happy. She found his expression deeply satisfying and joyful. What a wonderful night, she commented. The end of the night was approaching. The pitch-black night sky was fading. The rising sun was gradually changing the color of the sky. Twilight had passed and night too, and now dawn was coming. Hamel, Noir spoke. I have awoken from the dream I wished would last forever, and the night I hoped would never end is coming to an end. The night was retreating. Eugene felt it too. Simultaneously, Noir's end was approaching. Eugene placed his hand on his aching chest. Whether the pain was from successively using ignition or purely emotional, he did not want to decide. Tonight I have seen all of you, she said. Noir reached out her hand. Hamel, I have tasted the foundation of your being. Her trembling hand slowly moved towards Eugene. Even though he was right in front of her, her hand seemed unable to reach him. Every step towards reaching him felt incredibly distant. Noir felt death. Throughout her life she had witnessed countless deaths. She had often been the one to dish out death and had frequently watched others die. Showing one last dream to a doomed human was also one of Noir's hobbies. However, Noir had never truly felt her own death. Despite her ability to conjure any fantasy, she could not create the sensation of her own demise because she had never experienced it, nor could she imagine it. But now she could imagine it, she was feeling it. The eternal night she had so longed for was upon her. An unfathomable darkness, not flamboyant, loud, or noisy, but a dull and cold silence was settling in. Noir began, genuinely smiling even in the face of death. Tonight I have held you close. Cough. A surge of blood momentarily silenced her. Noir coughed up blood several times. With each episode her body stiffened and cooled. Her vision blurred, yet she did not let her smile falter. After coughing she continued, deeper and more intensely than anyone else could. Sienna Meridian, Anise Slywood, Christina Rodriguez. None of them knew Eugene as she had. Noir had experienced what they never could. She and Eugene had tried with all their might to kill each other. She came close to doing so, hesitated, and eventually faced death. Ah! Noir moaned. She finally managed to reach that hand that seemed unreachable. Eugene himself helped Noir grasp his hand. Noir's body trembled slightly. She came to a new understanding of the death she was feeling. It was not at all bleak or cold. It was not as dark as the night. Noir looked up at Eugene while blinking. She saw how his eyes were closed tight, how his lips were pursed, and how his cheeks twitched. His eyes seemed on the verge of tears yet shed none. His golden pupils quivered and his ash-gray hair twinkled in the distant light. Eugene saw the dawn behind him. It's warm, Noir chuckled. Someday I am reincarnated like you and we happen to meet by chance. Eugene stared at her. Would you recognize me? Will I remember you? She questioned. I wonder, Eugene murmured. It seems like a plausible thing. If it were to happen. Noir paused, then chuckled and shook her head. No, I won't say it. Discussing a potential distant future mattered less to her than the present. Hamel, she called out. Do you love me? Noir whispered. Eugene sighed softly. After a few breaths he slowly shook his head. No. He was not confused. The emotion he felt was not love. Eugene did not love Noir. He could not love her as long as she was Noir Giabella. You're cruel. You could lie just this once at the end, she said. But Noir was not disappointed by his response. She grinned broadly as she gently stroked his hand. But, Hamel, you hesitated, she commented. Her grip was weak, but she tugged gently. It wasn't enough strength to pull even a dish, but sufficient to convey her message. Eugene did not refuse but leaned in toward her. You might not have loved me, but you almost did, didn't you? She questioned. He could not deny it. The dream Noir had shown him, the battles leading up to now, no, even before that. When he found out Noir was the reincarnation of Arya, he had become aware of it. It had been unavoidable. What he had desperately longed to ignore had come to form a sentiment with her pleading. That's enough, Noir said, smiling as she nodded. The turmoil Hamel felt was not pure. It was not born solely from his perspective of Noir Giabella. But that did not matter. After all, it's all about me in the end. She glanced sideways. Sienna Meridian was approaching from behind the ruins, supporting the saint who had not yet regained consciousness. Noir observed Sienna's dirt-streaked face with a mischievous smile. Despite the situation, she couldn't help but feel a sense of superiority. It seems we are both not far off. Noir chuckled again, turning back to look at Eugene. His body trembled not just from emotion but also from the toll of nearing death. Yet despite the excruciating pain, Eugene would not die. Noir was different. She was going to die soon, fading away like the dim light of dawn. It would be troublesome if you collapsed before I die. So, she said, barely managing to lift her hand to Eugene's cheek, satisfied that her dying body could still move that way. She whispered, "May I say my last words?" "Sienna Meridian, come closer. Come and see me and Hamel," said Noir. Even in these moments close to death, Noor Giabella managed to maintain her playful tone. Her relentless madness and affection were enough to disgust Sienna. However, Sienna did not refuse but moved closer while supporting the saint. "You shocked me tonight, but that wasn't enough. After all, you, Anise Slywood and Christina Rogerus are all alive by my grace," said Noir. "Are your last words a mockery of us?" questioned Sienna. "That's right. Since I'm about to die, isn't it fine to leave behind some mockery as my last words?" Noir asked. Sienna unwittingly clenched her fist. At this, Noir let out a laugh. "I'm truly surprised. I've never liked you, Sienna Meridian, but today, you were quite admirable." "Your murderous intent was quite charming," complimented Noir. "What are you talking about?" Sienna asked. "But it's not enough. That level of murderous intent and magic can't kill me. Even less so kill the demon king of incarceration," Noir concluded. "Was it all just mockery and ridicule?" Sienna's eyebrows twitched, but before she could respond, Noir continued, "So I will give you the demon eye of fantasy." "What?" Sienna blurted. "I don't think I've said something so complicated that the wise Sienna Meridian can't understand. But if you really want me to repeat it, I will. I will give you the demon eye of fantasy along with my dark power," said Noir. Sienna's gaze was inevitably drawn to Noir's right eye. The demon eye of divine glory had burst from overuse, but the demon eye of fantasy remained intact. "This was not given to me by the demon king of incarceration," she said, "so I could pass it to you and you might be able to use it. It's not possible to transfer it to you as cleverly as was done in the case of Seal Lionheart, for a human without dark power, but you might find a way to wield it. But still heed this advice. Don't be foolish enough to embed it directly into your eyes. Try using it with that splendid magic of yours," advised Noir. "Why?" Sienna stumbled over the question. Why would Noor Giabella leave such a legacy? "Because I hope Hamel survives," Noir said with a smile. "I had hoped to kill him myself, but since I couldn't manage it, neither should the demon king of incarceration nor the demon king of destruction be able to kill Hamel. If you so frail were to stand behind Hamel, that alone would interfere with him. So," Noir whispered, smirking at Sienna, "please use it well. Keep Hamel alive. Your dreams, and those of Anise Slywood and Christina Rogers, I frankly don't care about them and hope they never come true." She paused. Her breaths were labored. Then Noir's smile shifted from mockery to something else. "But I do hope Hamel's dreams come true." "Crazy girl." Sienna didn't voice the words, instead collapsing where she stood. If only Noir had left it at mockery and derision, Sienna wouldn't have felt this way. The fact that she seemed satisfied after saying such things, looking at Eugene as if pleased, inflicted a bitter sense of defeat in Sienna. "Now Hamel." Noir turned her gaze to Eugene. Throughout the conversation with Sienna, Eugene had silently observed Noir. Touching her stiff cheek, Noir chuckled. "Will you fulfill my final wish?" she asked. "You want me to break your neck?" Eugene responded. That's Aria's wish. In the end, dying while feeling your touch wouldn't be a bad way to go, but I'd rather not," answered Noir. Eugene looked at her silently, waiting to hear her last wish. "Remember me forever," Noir requested. What could he say? How should he respond? Eugene himself didn't know. This wasn't love. Noor Giabella was someone who needed to be killed. And so he had killed her. Why then did this long-desired moment bring neither joy nor pleasure? There's no need for me to even say it. As if reading his thoughts, Noir whispered, "You'll remember me for the rest of your life." And so he would. He couldn't help but do so. At this moment, Eugene was recalling not Aria but Noor Giabella. He recalled the first time he met her as Eugene Lionheart, when he encountered her in the snowfield as Princess Scalia, before entering the Dragon Demon Castle at a hotel where she had come to him, amid the ruins of the fallen Dragon Demon Castle, where she first called him Hamel at the ball in Shimuin and here in Giabella City. This was the city she had crafted. It was a city brimming with narcissism, offering dreams and illusions to the visiting humans. It was the continent's foremost tourist attraction. It was a city where she had dealt with humans to feel guilt, loss, regret, and such emotions. Eugene remembered the night he had shared drinks with Noir, the night he had asked if there was no other way but to become enemies. Had Noir given a different answer then? Even if she hadn't, had Eugene hoped for a different answer? Sometimes you will dream about me, she said. Eugene just stayed quiet. You'll think that we could have had a different ending, she continued. It was inevitable that they would end up this way. Was it truly so? Was there no other possible ending? You will regret this, she claimed. Her words were prophetic. Even now Eugene was feeling regret. Hamel, do you remember what I said in this city? She asked. Noir's voice was faint as if it could fade away at any moment. You and I, at the moment our long connection is finally severed. I asked if you didn't want to give me one last gift. You had answered me like this. No. Even if I called it a wish, Noir whispered. Your wish is none of my concern. Someday when I kill you I'll slip a ring on my finger and onto your finger as you die. And after you're gone, I'll look at the ring on my ring finger and remember you forever, Noir repeated. If you end up killing me I hope you do the same. Yes, that's what I said. So. The blood-stained necklace around her neck jangled. Accept my ring, she asked. Eugene still didn't say anything. It doesn't have to be on the ring finger, she said. He felt the ring, cold now, no longer warmed by living blood. Please accept it, Hamel. Live with the ring that bears my name. Remember me all your life, and sometimes when you dream about me, when you wake up and feel my ring, think of today and feel regret, she said. Such a cruel and vicious wish, he responded finally. That's right, cruel and vicious. This is a curse. Isn't it strange? She asked. Her hand stroking his cheek was heavy. It slid down, eventually resting on Eugene's shoulder. She desired it. So she wanted it. Barely lifting her gaze and chin, she looked at him. I am the queen of the night demons, Noir Giabella, she declared. Her fumbling hand grasped his throat, pulling as if begging. He could have pulled away, but he did not. A will. A wish. A curse. Eugene complied with them all. Slowly he tilted his head, closing the distance between him and Noir. Their foreheads touched. Ahaha. Their foreheads slightly parted. Her red lips opened, then closed again. Without a word, her lips drew nearer. The brief kiss ended. You're quite sentimental and romantic, you know, Noir commented. Memories were made. In snowfields, hotels, seas, balls, cities, taverns, streets, deserts, dueling rings, dreams, ruins. Just as she had always said, Noir approached Eugene whenever there was an opportunity. No matter how much Eugene rejected or insulted her, she met him with a smile. In this way they built memories. Unwillingly, something accumulated in Hamel's heart. And today all of it bloomed. She felt a sense of loss. Regret, attachment, sorrow. All these emotions were new to Noir. I hated the dawn, Noir said. Her hazy eyes moved. The sky was no longer dark. The light was settling into the completely devastated city. Because it ends the night. She saw Eugene's face for the last time. Swallowing hard, Eugene grasped Noir's necklace in his hand. But, Noir smiled broadly, I wanted to say good morning to you. The creeping dawn cast their shadows together. Good morning, Hamel. The night had ended. Noir's eyes closed.